you done now?
Never has there been a more exciting time to be alive. A time of rousing wonder and heroic achievement. As they said in the film, Back to the Future, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, they're gonna see some serious shit.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast, the only podcast looking back in time at the greatest film trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore, and we have a great show for you today. Today, we're going to be talking to the illustrator for the brand new book that comes out next week. It's called Back to the Future, Race Through Time. And the illustrator's name is J.J. Harrison. J.J. and I are going to talk about his project working on Back to the Future, you know, an extension of the franchise in this book form. And guys, this book is awesome. I'm going to be honest with you. This book is sweet. It's definitely a coffee table book, and it comes with a DeLorean that winds up, and it has a track on the pages. We'll talk about it with JJ, but it's got like a track on the pages that the DeLorean races through 1885 all the way to 2015. It's an awesome book. If you're a Back to the Future fan, which obviously you listen to this podcast, you should do it. You should get it. Just do it. Do it now. I'd do it for you. I hope y'all enjoyed my Back to the Future commentary that we did last week. That was a much more difficult task than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a much easier task after a little while, and it wasn't. It was not easy at all to sit there and try to analyze, because I got caught up in the story at times, you know. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I hope you enjoyed it, because I enjoyed doing it. It was a fun time. But let me tell you about this interview today. JJ, I just want to do a little disclaimer here. I set this interview up with this publishing company. I thought it was going to go off at 3 p.m. Central Time. That's what my confirmation email said. It said 3 p.m. So last night, I get home from doing my radio show with Booker T, and I was like, man, I'm going to go see Endgame tomorrow because I haven't seen Avengers. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what time should I go? So there's a 10:30 showing. I had the seats that I wanted in the theater that I like, or the theater. And I said, okay, boom, 10:30. And then I was like, if it's going off at 10:30, then I'll be out by like 2. And that'll give me time to get back to the house, set up, look through the book, write some questions down, and really get involved with, you know, this interview with JJ and the story and talk about it. So anyway, I thought it was going off at 3 p.m. I get out of Avengers Endgame, and I get back into my driveway at like 1:57 Central Time. Walk up to my studio. It's 1:59, and at 2 p.m. exactly, my phone rings, and I'm like, I wonder who this is. Answer it. It was JJ. It was JJ Harrison. You know, I'd either I'd gotten the time early, there was a miscommunication some kind of way, so the interview was at 2. So I was like on the spot, had to get him right on. I'm just going through this emotional roller coaster that is Avengers Endgame, which I'm gonna. Can I? No, I'm not gonna spoil it. But there are things that pertain maybe to this show that we have to discuss. But anyway, I just got back, so I was flustered, went through that emotional roller coaster and journey, and then I had to interview JJ. So I'm a little bit, at the beginning of the interview, I'm a little bit perplexed as to what I'm supposed to be doing. But we get through it. We make it work. It was a really fun time talking to JJ, because you could tell he's a true fan of Back to the Future, and he felt like he had so much to prove to the fans, the diehards, the pinheads like you and I. So we're going to go to that interview right now. This is my conversation with J.J. Harrison, the illustrator for the brand new book that's out next Tuesday, by the way, May the 7th, I believe, or May the 6th. Let me check. Hold on. May the 7th. Yeah, I was right. It's out this Tuesday, May the 7th. It is Back to the Future, Race Through Time. It's a awesome coffee table book published by Insight Editions. Definitely need to pick this up if you're a Back to the Future fan. We're going to talk all about it right now with my guy, J.J. Harris. And joining me on the show right now, he is the illustrator of the brand new book, Back to the Future, Race Through Time, which is out next Tuesday. Welcome to the show, Mr. J.J. Harrison. J.J., how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you, man. You know, I got this book in the mail, I don't know, maybe a month ago or 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I got to tell you, if I was a child, which I like to think that I still am at times, this would be my favorite thing ever in the world. So the book is essentially, for people out there, it's a book about Back to the Future, and it comes with a car, a little wind-up DeLorean that has a track. It has a track on all these different places through, Hill Valley in 2015, 1955, 1855. So talk to me a little bit about the project. How did you become involved with this Back to the Future Race Through Time?
Oh, sure. Well, the publisher, Insight Editions, I had done some books for them. We did a pretty popular book a couple of years ago. It was where we took the movie Die Hard and turned it into like a kind of like a children's picture book. And that book got a lot of sales and was really popular. So I think that they liked working with me on that. So they asked me if I'd be interested in doing something like this, which was kind of crazy at the time because I had never looked like this. But so it was an interesting proposition, and I thought, well, this will be cool. At the time, I thought I would get to draw more characters in it. I was kind of looking forward to drawing like Doc and Marty, but they wanted to rely more on the landscapes for this book.
Wait, were you like a Back to the Future fan growing up? Was it one of your favorite movies, like it was for so many people out there?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's been fortunate for me, the projects I get to work on. It's just coincidence that I happen to love those properties. But Back to the Future was a big deal in my life, in my childhood. I think I was 6 when I saw it for the first time. And that's the year it came out. But it was huge impact on me. It's like, that's the reason I got into skateboarding. Skateboarding became such a huge part of my life just because of Marty riding around on a skateboard. It's kind of funny when I sat down to do this, I thought, like, how many times have I watched the Back to the Future trilogy in my life? And, you got to figure it's at least a couple times a year for just like a regular fan. And so it was kind of interesting to figure that out. And then in doing this, it required a lot of rewatching, and which was kind of funny because they didn't. I would have thought that Universal or somebody would provided a bunch of material to work with, but no, they were kind of just like, hey, we need to draw Hill Valley and all these different time frames, and just watch the movies.
Was it a little bit intimidating, though? I know you worked on other books before, other properties like Die Hard. Back to the Future has such, a cult fan base, or not even a cult fan base, but such a passionate fan base, myself included, obviously. Did you ever feel like, man, this is a big task? I'm having to draw the clock tower, the DeLorean.
Yeah.
These are pretty monumental things from the films that people hold near and dear to their heart. Did you feel the pressure to deliver?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was one of those things that I didn't want to just kind of like make stuff up. I wanted things to be as accurate as possible because I thought, there's going to be people like yourself out there. They're gonna catch me on certain things. Like, well, that's not what that looks like. It, like I said, it required rewatching the movie over and over again. I had it playing for weeks straight, the whole trilogy, while I was drawing this project, and there'd be parts where we wanted to do this building or that building, and there just wasn't a really good shot of it in the movie, and so it required a bunch of internet research. And sometimes you'd find out like, oh, well, this same set was used in this other movie or this other TV show, and so I'd get a copy of those and pull it out just to see if I could see things from different angles. And I actually ended up rebuilding Hill Valley in a 3D model, just so I can move a camera around and check it out. And you pull stuff like I don't know if you've seen like the Lego Dimensions Back to the Future game, but for sure I pulled that out and played through that just to get a different look at like Hill Valley in each era, and see like, well, this is how they solved the problem. They drew it this way or they did it that way, and just to compare with what I was doing kind of fill in the gaps, you know.
Yeah, I love that you had to rebuild Hill Valley, a 3D model. Hopefully it was to scale. I hope you took the time to make it to scale. You know, because Doc, he can never get that right. He can never get that right. You know,
Right,
I'm looking through the book right now. Now, where'd the idea come from, or was it initially pitched to you that, hey, not only do we want you to draw, you know, Hill Valley in 55, 85, 1885, and kind of illustrate some of these iconic sets and iconic set pieces like the clock tower and whatnot. But when was the idea, or was it like it from the beginning, to have the DeLorean actually driving through? How did that come about, and was that a challenge for you at all? Because it's now you're looking at it from, you know, a bird's eye view instead of, you know, looking directly at something. The perspective switches completely. Was that the original idea when they pitched you, like, hey, not only do we want you to do these drawings, we're gonna actually have a car driving on the book while people are flipping through it?
Yeah, that was part of the original pitch, and that probably was the most intimidating part, because they wanted me to design the layout for the city each time, and then as part of it, they wanted the track to be different each time, and they wanted the track to kind of run a certain way so the car wouldn't just zip through too quickly, and it wouldn't go off the track or anything, and so it was kind of just a combination of winging it and kind of imagining how it was going to play out in the final print, because the best I had to work with was they had like this they had like a video they sent me of kind of like a more generic version of the same kind of book. I don't even think it had any it didn't even have anything printed on the pages. It just had the track kind of on the book spread, and then they had some kind of car zipping around on it, and so seeing that and kind of just trying to imagine what it was going to be like for the DeLorean to whip through these areas of town, and you know, my biggest stressor was probably trying to make the streets wide enough and the track designed well enough that, you know, it would seem kind of natural. It wouldn't seem like it was just covering things up or doing something weird.
Now, while you're watching the movies, obviously you're having to watch them with a really close eye, like we do on this show. We watch them very closely. What are some of the things that stuck out to you that you were like, you know, based upon second, third, fifth, 18th watching or 18th viewing, you were like, oh man, I never noticed that in Back to the Future before. For example, for me, it was, you know, the 1885 in Back to the Future 3 when Marty and Doc first go over to talk to the train conductor, and you can see Clara Clayton like in the background while they're talking, you know, about Shonash Ravine. Like, I never saw that until I watched with a super careful eye. Was there anything that stuck out to you like that in any of the movies?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of little things like that. I mean, there'd even be, you start to pay more attention to like the rules of the time travel and stuff like that. Like, I noticed something I thought was kind of paradoxical going through this, where, you know, when old man Biff goes back in time and gives, you know, his younger self the almanac, he then like returns to his same timeline, which hasn't been changed at all by that event. And so I thought, whoa, that's kind of paradoxical. But like the more you watch it, the more I don't know if Doc explains it, but time, their version of time travel and their rules of time kind of acts like a river, like there's ripples, like it kind of takes time to catch up. And so you kind of have to like, I had to explain it to myself and to my kids who are, you know, obviously around watching this with me while I was working. I had like, cause my son has Asperger's and he gets really hung up on things like that don't make sense. And so when we spotted that kind of paradox in there where it's like, oh, hey, you know, Biff returns to his own timeline, wouldn't it have been changed by then? And, you know, wouldn't everything be altered? How can you return to everything being the same way it was when he left?
It's crazy that you bring that up, though. It's crazy, not to cut you off, JJ, but it's crazy you bring that up because this has actually been a topic of conversation on the show before, because in a deleted scene from Back to the Future 2, I don't know if you've ever seen it, in a deleted scene when Biff comes back, old man Biff, when he comes back to the same timeline that he left from, in the deleted scene, he disappears completely.
Oh wow! No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so he
That's
disappears
cool.
completely, and it's kind of like then it explains, oh wow, he must have really screwed something up. We never found out what happened between alternate 1985 and alternate 2015, but something happened between that 30-year period
Right.
which caused him to disappear and eventually, I guess pass away, I guess was what it was. So tell your son that, or maybe go back and watch it because it might fill in
Yeah.
it might fill in some blanks there. So, okay, for me, watching it as a child, always and to this day, Doc Brown, favorite character, hands down, bar none. For you, is Doc your favorite? Is Marty? And I've even grown an affinity to Biff. Who's the character that stood out to you?
Sure. I think it's Doc. I mean, Doc is the most endearing to me, and he's the most like he's just that guy you want to tag along with and have an adventure with. Like he's just exciting. Like he just shows up on scene and he's like doing something crazy, and he has the most animated reactions to things, and so even as a kid, I mean, obviously as a kid, you idolize Marty because you see yourself in Marty. He's kind of like that, like the Peter Parker type character where it's like, oh, this is me. Um, but yeah, I think that it's definitely Doc has been my favorite.
Now, one of the things that also stood out to me when I was looking through the book, and it never occurred to me, when I was looking at the cover, which is a beautifully illustrated cover, you see the clock tower, you see, the DeLorean on top of a clock
you.
with fire trails, you see the flying train, the police car. And it was funny when I saw the Lion Estates post. Initially, I thought that was supposed to be the ledge of the clock tower, and I was like, "Wait, that's a lion. That's not the jaguar or whatever." And then it was the first time that it ever occurred to me that there's two sets of iconic cats in Back
Yeah.
to the Future. Well, I don't know if that was something you ever picked up on. I wonder what the explanation was. Did you ever put any thought to that? Why are there these two sets of cats that seem to be a prominent, landmark?
Yeah, no, I wondered about it, but I didn't do any research on that to see if there was anything there. But I did look at like the sculpts for the lion and stuff. Like you've seen some of those props and just to get reference. And sometimes it's just like, whoa, there's a lot of detail on this. Like I never stopped and looked at it. And I think that that's probably one of the things that I got most out of this project was just looking at everything and looking at all the detail they put into like just into like the cafe in each different era, and the stuff like where Marty goes to buy the almanac, like all the crap that's like in the window there. Just like looking at it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Now, how closely did you have to work with the writer Mark, who provided the text for the book? How closely did y'all work together on the project? Would you send him some pages and he say, okay, this is where I can put this, and this, or hey, I want to discuss this particular thing, or I want to make this landmark. Can you draw something around it that would make sense, for the map of Hill Valley?
Sure. Actually, unfortunately, we didn't. I didn't even meet Mark, on online or anything until after the project had wrapped. Like when I actually got this project, I didn't have much of the text and stuff that you see in the book. I didn't have any of that to work with. It was kind of like I was kind of given really loose, like somebody at the publisher had put together kind of a loose drawing of where they thought things would be in relation to each other on each page spread, and if you could see those compared to like what ended up being in the book, it's kind of a drastic difference, but it was something to work with. It was just like, this is all we have to give you, run with it. And sometimes when you're like a hired gun as an illustrator or writer to come into a project like this, like a licensed property that's so revered and has such a huge fan base already, they're kind of relying on you to fill in a lot of those gaps and be creative and be an artist and solve these problems for them. So this is actually one of those projects where I was probably given the least amount of stuff to work with before going into it. And when I'd seen I saw some demos online, some videos of the final book with the actual all the text in it. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like because that was my first time seeing it. I actually haven't even held the book in my hands yet because I haven't gotten my copies.
Boy, I feel privileged now then
yeah,
to
you
be
actually are.
thumbing through it.
I've been pretty jealous of guys like you who've gotten your advanced copies. But I could see online, like you look like there's a nice video. BackToTheFuture.com put up some nice videos of a walkthrough of the book, and so after seeing it with all the text, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And and I think that a lot of times licensed projects like this, they're kind of thrown together in a time frame because publishers, they have a limited window they can work with. Like they have publishing windows they have to work with, but then they also have a limited time they can work with a license before their license expires. And so I think it was just kind of like a race, like literally, like, the book's called A Race Through Time, but we literally had to race through getting this book done. So looking at it now with where the text is and some of the things, I'm like, I totally would have done this differently. I would have changed that. And there's always going to be things like that in any project. But I mean, this was definitely one where I think, all of us involved on the project probably underestimated how much it takes to draw a building and how much it takes to like paint every window and paint every windowsill and every ledge and draw bricks. So it was kind of a different project for me to work on. So we kind of like had this really tight schedule. And, of course there's always all these things I would have wanted to go back and do. Like I wanted to add more life to each spread. I put more people and more cars and stuff like that in each spread. But unfortunately, we were kind of strapped for time.
Well, what I love, though, about it is, especially for a Back to the Future fan, it's almost like a Where's Waldo book in a lot of ways. When you're looking through it, like I'm looking through it, I'm like, oh, there's one of my favorite things when I first saw it, I was like, look, there's George. He's a peeping Tom, and you can see him being a peeping Tom, Or, here's one thing that I think that if you're a diehard Back to the Future fan and you get this book, you're going to appreciate. And it's not anything that's ever discussed. I've never seen it printed one time anywhere. There's been no discussion of it. There's been no backstory to it, but I really appreciated its inclusion in this book, and that was the Bluebird Motel. No one ever talks about the Bluebird Motel, but you see it several times in the first movie from the 1955, and there's no explanation. I do have a keychain for the Bluebird Motel, but that's all I know about it. Did you know anything?
Right.
Did you find out anything when you were like looking? You're just obviously looking for the sign to recreate it, but did you ever look into the Bluebird Motel at all?
Oh no, and those are the hardest buildings to get reference for too. Is because they're just like whipped by really quickly in a scene but yeah, I think that to draw those, I had to pull out like some set photos, like behind the scenes set photos. I had to dig deep through Google to find a really nice archive of set photos that showed those, even because there was just nothing available, like nothing called them out like by name or anything like that. So, I thought it was important, like, cause you could see the sign clearly, like back where, Marty's supposed to start with a DeLorean to take off to get back to 1985. It's like where Doc draws that big line. I was like, okay, there's definitely a sign for it out here. So I wanted to include that, but yeah, there's a lot of little things like that I wanted to make sure that we got right. Just like I said, I didn't want to just like make things up and have people kind of, it's not because kids aren't going to know, but there people like you or me would definitely know, like, well, what's that doing there?
Right. Now, did you go to any, like, I know you're in Utah, but did you go to any of the physical locations? I know when I was in Pasadena, California the last time, I was like, I got to make a trip. I got to go see the Gamble House. That's where Doc Brown lives. I got to see it. I got to go over there. Were there any of the sets? Did you get a chance to, or did you want to?
No, just for time, there wasn't the capability. But, I grew up in Southern California, and we used to go to, like Universal, and we could like visit some of the lots and stuff. So I remember seeing, like the courthouse, and things like that, back when I was a kid. But there are definitely things, like it definitely added things to my bucket list. Like, okay, now I need to go and see the Gamble House. I definitely want to see, that street in Pasadena where like George McFly's house is, because it's such a weird house. Like the architecture in that house is so strange, and it's like, it's still there, and it still looks like that. So it's pretty cool. So, I've definitely put those on my to-do list. Like next time I'm back in Southern California, we need to like visit each of these places.
Now, I asked this of everybody, but okay, there was only 3 films. We had an animated series, we had the comic series, we have even the game, which expands the timeline even further. But let's say all that didn't happen. Even the ride. Let's say all that didn't happen though. It stops at 3. And then, someone says, J.J. Harrison, we're going to go Back to the Future again. We're making Back to the Future Part 4. What would you like to see these characters do or go? Is there another timeline you'd like to see him do? I mean, we saw 100 years back. We saw 30 years in the future, 30 years back. Is there another timeline you would like to see these characters involved in?
Oh my goodness. That is a hard question.
Because we now, after 2015, after October 2015, Back to the Future is officially a series about the past. So would you like to see him go further into the future? Anything like that ever come to your mind?
I think that part of the fun for me was the mythology of like the families, like Biff's family lineage and the McFly lineage. I think I'd like to see them explore more of Doc Brown's family history, and because it seems like he's got kind of a reputation somehow. Like it seems like the Brown family has some kind of reputation in Hill Valley, and so I think it'd be fun to see more, to see that, to see what has caused that. So maybe to see some of that history would be cool. Certainly seeing the future is always going to be cool. I love to see like futurist versions of like, oh, this is what we think the future will be like in sci-fi. And that's one of the things I love about Back to the Future is because they didn't, a lot of times when things go into the future in fiction, it's kind of like go to this like weird dystopia. And but I feel like in Back to the Future, it's still pretty positive. I mean, the only dystopia ever was like Biff's version of like 1985.
Yeah.
But so I think like it'd be fun to see what their positive view of the future might be like too.
I think on repeat viewings of Back to the Future, we all, like I said, we pick up on little things in the background, but we also, you start to have your own favorite little scenes that may have not been your favorite when you were a kid, but now that you've seen it so many times, it sticks out to you a little bit more. Or a favorite line. My favorite line from the entire trilogy, JJ, is when Marty goes back to 1955 in the first movie. He's at the Baines household. He's sitting down for dinner, and his mom tries to grope his leg, so he gets up and he runs out, and his future grandfather just says he's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too.
Parents are probably idiots too.
It's my favorite line in the entire trilogy. It's my favorite line by leaps and bounds. Do you have a favorite quote from the films?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I mean,
really though, Marty's grandfather, Lorraine's dad, had a couple of great ones. Also, who the hell is John F. Kennedy was another great one.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's hard to say. I mean, like very well. Like you watch the movie enough times, like you're basically saying it. You could say every line before it's said, and so they all kind of have significance to you. I think for me, I like the touching moments. Like I like when Doc is kind of talking to himself about like he's like kind of like, oh, you're doing a weather experiment, huh? And he talks about how, oh, there's going to be lightning, all right. It kind of like, there's those moments where it kind of comes up and the music gets a little bit like pulls on the heartstrings a little, you know what I mean? And so I think the moments like that are usually my favorite, but yeah, it's so hard to pull out one quote because like everything in the movie is so good. Like
I could go on for days, obviously, about every line. Okay, then I'll put you on the spot. This is the last question I got for you. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
And there is a correct answer to this. No, I'm kidding. Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. On any given day, my list changes of how I rank the movies, and it's very hard. Most of the time I go 1, 3, 2. Sometimes I go 3, 1, 2. But I recently watched Back to the Future 2 like a week ago, and I really liked it. Which one for you, if you had to rank them? How are you going to rank them? 1 through 3. How does your list turn out, JJ?
I think it's probably always going to be 1, 3, 2. 2. I always had like as a kid, when I was a little kid, I thought 2 was the coolest.
Right.
Future hoverboards, everything, it's so cool. But as a mature adult, I've grown to kind of like have a lesser taste for that one. Except I will say this project probably sparked a new appreciation, new love of that era of 2, and mostly because of the 2015 Hill Valley, having to like live there and live in it and draw it and figure out how the heck it's laid out, and then looking at like how they're all the little things, like looking at, they had like an underground mall You know, that, I mean, they never show it, but like there's this like underground mall that goes under the courthouse area. And it's like, oh, I want to go down there. I want to see what's down there, you know? And so I think I do have a much stronger appreciation for 2 now, but it's definitely, I love 3. I love the Old West. I mean, I remember that's probably the one that as a kid, I have the most clear memory of seeing like in the theater and you know, being so happy about it. And my dad was always into old westerns, and so it was kind of like being able to share that with him. You know, he was really into that movie too. My parents both loved it, and so I think there was a lot of excitement around 3, but I think 1 is definitely always going to be number 1.
It's
in my
hard.
heart.
It's hard to go against Back to the Future 1. It's just so great. I think that 2 is a lot of times it gets, I think, the worst rap. A lot of people put at their bottom. I think it's way better if you watch 2 and 3 back to back, because I think that's kind of how they're supposed to be. Just watch them back to back, because the way 2 ends, it just, it leads right into 3, and you have to almost watch them back to back. So, but here's the thing: you can relive 1955, 1885, 1985, and 2015, and you can race through time with a collectible wind-up DeLorean, which is such a phenomenal touch. It is Back to the Future, Race Through Time. It's available next week, and it's illustrated by the man I'm talking to right now, J.J. Harrison. It's going to be available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. J.J., I appreciate you so much for taking the time to talk about this incredible project.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, hey, hopefully we'll bump into each other sometime in the future. That's J.J. Harrison, Back to the Future, the podcast. We'll be back next week.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now? Oh, Brad, what have you done now?